Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
8:07, we've been talking about rock and roll and all that stuff here, and we were just informed by our boss who came in. I mean, I have great sympathy for our boss. Mm-hmm. He's being dragged tonight to a Barry Manilow concert.
I don't think he's being dragged.
I got dragged to a Barry Manilow concert years ago, and I swore that it was such an assault on my manhood that I would never go back.
There's
again.
nothing wrong with going to see Barry. In fact, I would go see Barry Manilow in a heartbeat.
That speaks volumes about you.
I would.
Speaking of rock and roll, this whole discussion really was started by Jake Tappers, our next guest on the phone line right now. Jake, you saw this tweet about Aerosmith being on 60 Minutes and them claiming to be the last standing American rock roll act, and you tweeted out the answers false. So that means you must have a strong opinion about it.
You left out the key word that I was objecting to, which is the last great American rock band still standing.
So you're suggesting Aerosmith was never a great band?
That is, I'm not suggesting it, I'm stating it, yes. But I'll tell you something, and I say this, I have been to see them in concert. So it's not like I'm just like some rock and roll snob or some idiot frat boy who just likes Dave Matthews. Like, I get it. I understand why people enjoy them. The concert was not strong. It was short. And they're a very fun band, but they're not great.
But did you see them?
Well, who's great in your mind?
The Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. I mean, great is not a word. Let me put it this way: I have higher standards than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when it comes to the inductions of honors in the Tapper Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Right. I would not say that. I mean, do you really think you're going to say Aerosmith is great? I mean, great is a word like hero. It is overused, and when you overuse a word like that, then it eventually, if we're all great, then no one's great. That's the point I made.
Oh, it's like The Incredibles. Remember that movie? That's fantastic. All right, but did you see Aerosmith in their heyday, or did you see them like recently?
It had to have been in the 90s. Sometime the late.
That's
90s.
kind of on their second leg, or the second life.
Yeah, but they weren't like they didn't have the oxygen tents up, but they were. They were, and it was not in their heyday. No, but it was. It was kind of. Maybe I saw them at a bad period, but even if, regardless of the concert experience, they're not a great band. They're fine. Right. They're enjoyable. They're not great.
All right, we'll get off this topic after this.
The guy is a judge on American Idol. I mean, this is not Paul McCartney we're talking about.
But what was the last great American rock band? See, in my opinion, it's either Guns N' Roses or Pearl Jam. What are your thoughts on
that? Those are two absolutely great rock and roll bands. Absolutely. I mean, I would say Pearl Jam probably, but I mean, you could there are those who would argue Wilco.
Yeah. Not hard enough, though, for me. I mean, that's not a classic American rock band.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, look, my only point is, probably the line is, do you think John Bon Jovi is a great band? Do you think Van Halen is a great band? Like, that's kind of like the line. Like, no. I can understand who...
Van Halen, yes. I like Bon Jovi, too, I have to say.
Well, this has been
like JBJ. I'm just saying, that's the line. Don't... Right. If you're going to say JBJ is great, fine, but that's as far as I'll go.
Well, this has been a great conversation that I'm sorry I started. But
overusing the word, that's the problem.
No, it is a great conversation.
You're part of the problem.
I stand guilty as charged. We do have some politics to talk about. Yesterday at the White House, it seemed like a great deal of time during the daily briefing was spent knocking down the rumbles, the rumors, the speculation, the idle speculation that Joe Biden might be replaced by Hillary Clinton. No. So it's sort of been knocked back in a very way. But when he knocked it back, he said, well, that was decided, I think the correct word is some time ago, suggesting that perhaps it had been considered and discussed.
There's no chance of this happening because he said chains, because he said they want y'all back in chains, that they would dump Joe Biden from the ticket. There's no upside to jump. First of all, let me say something. This chains thing, most of the American people don't know about it, and most of the people who would care about it, either because they agree with it or they strongly disagree with it, have already decided who they're voting for.
Yeah, you're right about that.
In November. And Joe, there is a huge disadvantage for any president who dumps a sitting vice president from the ticket.
And what is it?
It brings up, it erodes their likability. It makes them seem disloyal. That person, Joe Biden, has fans. He is popular among some Americans, some politicians. He helped President Obama get elected. He has an appeal. And John Martin had a great piece in Politico yesterday about how the candor of Joe Biden, it's two sides of the same coin. Sometimes it's, you have a week like you had this week with the Chains comment and such, but other times he's really good on the stump because he is this effusive person. So I don't see this ever happening, and I realize it's fun to talk about, but it's not something that the downside is so great that I cannot imagine anyone ever serious. When's the last time somebody was dumped? Spiro Agnew?
Yeah, I think to have one that was actually dumped, it would have to go back to FDR.
Yeah, dumped.
Why would Spiro Agnew not count? Because he resigned?
He resigned, I guess, yeah. Well, it's the same thing. I mean,
all right,
resigned in quotes. Yeah. Quote, resigned.
Right. Quote. Not to belabor the point, but in Jay Carney's answer, he said that was all decided some time ago, and some people looked at it and said, well, it sounds like they did have a conversation about it at some point. You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
All right. So I understand.
By the way, let me say also, I'd love it just on a personal level or a professional level as a political
great story.
Reporter.
Yeah,
it'd be great to cover. I mean, I'm not against it. I just don't think it's serious.
You are this week with George Stephanopoulos. You're doing something special with the University of Virginia, I hear.
That's right. The University of Virginia Miller Center. And this week we have a big debate. I'm subbing for George this Sunday, and we'll be debating the big issue on the table, which is the U.S. headed towards bankruptcy? Both because of the fiscal cliff we all face, the nation faces at the end of the year if Congress doesn't get its act together and Washington doesn't get its act together, with the Bush tax cuts coming back and the deep cuts from the failure of the super committee. And then also more longer term, looking at Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the growth of entitlement programs. What does the country need to do to be back on a path of fiscal solvency? So we'll have Grover Norquist and Austin Goolsbee, Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, Congressman Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, Kim Strassel, Neil Borowski, for a very full and I'm sure passionate debate about the subject.
Yeah, especially with those guys. All right, Jake, we always appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jake Tapper, ABC Senior White House Correspondent and author of the tweet that gave us a lot of fodder this morning.
Yeah, we gave us something to talk about. All right, thanks, Jake.